Good morning everyone, and welcome to the Christchurch City Council meeting, Thursday the 14th of May, and welcome to Level 2 in our COVID-19 crisis environment, and Level 2 means that we are able to meet in the chamber, but you'll notice that we are all seated a metre apart. And that is down to some people who've undertaken some very hard work. Before the meeting gets underway, though, I would like to invite Councillor James Daniels to welcome us officially back to the building, and then I will invite Councillor Sarah Templeton to make a karakia timatanga and to start the meeting. Thank you.
Kia ora. Kātua hau, kei te mihi whakatau, ki te whare, ko te hononga, e tūnei, tēnā koe, mō tō mana, tō rangatiratanga, te hononga, tēnā koe. Ki te kaimahi, koutou, tātou, ka pai tō mahi I mua, kia ora mō tēnā, ka rawe ki a koutou. So I just say refer to and acknowledge the building that we're in, which has got mana in its own right. We bring ourselves back here to do the mahi, and I've acknowledged also the staff who have kept the whare warm and have prepared it for this first of our meetings post COVID-19, the lockdown. So kia ora tātou, he mihi whakatimata mō Sarah.
Kia ora James. Kia ora koutou, kia hui mai nei ki tēnei whare, whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hi ake ana te atakura. He tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihei mauri ora.
Kia ora. And thank you very much. Look, and welcome to the meeting. And welcome to all of those who are live streaming in. I made a point of welcoming you to the meetings, those who are observing online as well. When it was more obvious to us that this was the way that we were communicating as we were all online. I'd like to welcome media back into the building as well as essential services. It's good to see you in person, and I do hope that this is going to improve communication in terms of the way that we are able to continue to do business as we continue to grapple with the challenges that COVID-19 presents our city as well as the nation. So I'm going to just remind people of a few things. So could I remind all councillors that they are to turn their microphones on when they are speaking. It is absolutely vital, as the number of people who are also joining us online for presenting to the council today. There are a number of them who are online, and they will not be in a position to hear you if you do not use your microphone. The second thing is that for those that are joining us by way of the virtual meeting room facility, welcome to the meeting. And if I could remind you also to put your microphones on when you are invited to speak or have a point that you wish to make, and please feel free to contribute as if you were in the room. But I will also ask you to keep your microphones off when you are not participating in the meeting. We're not interested in people's dogs and various other activities, the dishwasher going on, the jug boiling. Sometimes that can be an irritant to a meeting, so thank you very much for keeping your microphones off. I know that I caused a few of those concerns, largely with other meetings that were going on in my household at the same time, and someone with a rather loud voice. So I do understand the importance of doing it. And the other thing is that for those that are beaming into the meeting, feel free to use your video if you like as well. It's good. It will show up on the screen here, and will also show up on the screen in front of myself and the Chief Executive. So thank you very much. Sure, it won't be completely straightforward, but we'll do the best that we can. My first item is apologies, and I have Councillor Goff for temporary absence and Councillor Johansson for early departure. Hopefully neither of those will be actually required, but for the sake of completeness, would someone like to move that they be accepted? Pauline Cotter seconded Sam McDonald. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. I had one declaration of interest, but item 12, development contributions, Central City rebate schemes, I'm not going to deal with that paper today. I've withdrawn it, and the matter will be reviewed, and it will reappear on a subsequent agenda. And therefore the deputations by appointment, there are 3 written deputations on item 12, which also are not relevant to today's proceedings, and they will be retained and may be added to when the matter does come back. Item number 4 is the presentation of petitions, and there are none. And then we have a group of council minutes, two sets of minutes. Would someone like to move that they be confirmed? Mike Davidson, seconded by Sarah Templeton. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. And the next item, item number 7, is the update by the COVID-19 Incident Management Team lead. And if I could invite Mary Richardson to take us through that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, councillors. I hope you can hear me.
Loud and clear.
Oh, good. Great. Okay. So I'll try to do a very quick update today, because I really do want to just concentrate on our transition to alert level 2. The first slide you'll see there is just a sort of snapshot of the health overview, and I won't go into details about that, but just of note that we've had the 2 days in a row now of no new cases, and the epi curve is really just flattening out now. So it's really good signs for New Zealand and also Christchurch and Canterbury. But as I said, I want to focus on that move to alert level 2, and everyone will be aware that on Monday, the Prime Minister announced that from today onwards, we are in alert level 2. So this is fantastic for council and also for the people we serve, our communities, because we have been able to reopen our facilities. And the next slides just actually flick through some of those. So we have reopening our art gallery from tomorrow, Tūranga Library from tomorrow, all our service centres, libraries and those co-located community facilities there will all be open tomorrow. Our smaller libraries will be opening on Monday. Our recreation centres, all our recreation centres, so that's our gyms, our pools across the city, as well as our sports halls will be opening on Monday, apart from Graham Condon, which is just finishing some refurbishing that we took the opportunity during the closure to do that quickly, but so that will be opening a bit later. All our campgrounds have opened for bookings today. Our playgrounds, our parks, as you know, remained open, and we kept sort of monitoring on those, and some of our rangers out just keeping a watch on those. But today, all our playgrounds have opened. Teams across there have been cleaning those, ready for the opening over the last few days. All our public toilets are reopening, visitor centres, wharfs, jetties. And we are also reopening our sports fields, but this will actually be done over several weeks, because we have 322 that we are actually getting the line markings and posts up, and also working with the sports codes. about what timing they are intending to come back to those sports fields. So on that, it is actually important. I do want to actually say a huge thanks to Spark and Web Tools. They have enabled council to open our facilities safely by actually sponsoring the traceable or contact tracing tool that we're using across our facilities. And Michael from Spark and Helen and Brett from Web Tools have been amazing. They are moving through the hundreds of our facilities, installing what needs to be put in place there, training our staff, and so those facilities are ready to go live and can track people, but also keep those details in a really secure way, so they're not sort of accessible. So huge thanks to them for supporting the city and the people to be able to get back to doing the things they enjoy doing. Just also want to mention on some of the things that are happening out through our Civil Defence EOC area and our call centre. We've had outward bound calls. I've mentioned this before, but we're now in a second round of those in partnership with MSD. Those are calls made out to citizens over 70 years old. 2,700 calls have been made and have connected with 2,132 older people. And just checking in, making sure they have what they need, they're supported, and if they need any extra supports, connecting them to them. And you'll see there on the slide a comment that was sent back in, actually wasn't made at the time, but was sent back into council from one of those people, just saying how important that call was. And we've had a number of people feeding back like that. The other thing we've also done, as you'll be aware of through our call centre in partnership with our EOC and Civil Defence, is managed that 0800 helpline, where we've received over 2,300 calls into that, and from those calls have actually been distributing food and other needs. So we have distributed over 1,500 food parcels and vouchers to people over this period. The largest, we've done that in partnership with City Mission, Salvation Army, Bit Food, Student Volunteer Army, although our own team have done the largest amount with 673, and that's just because those other agencies couldn't scale up to the capacity as quickly, and also have a lot of their own work to do. So that's been a huge effort by that response team, many of who are actually volunteers as well as staff. We've also been supporting the repatriation flights, both outward bound and inward bound, and now particularly moving into what we do with the vehicles that were left behind or abandoned, and trying to make recontact with those people or dispose of them in different ways. Across our, and I won't go into details about this, but across our three waters, waste and transport in that city service area, they've maintained their services through, but over now an alert to level 2 can really step up the services, including those transport services that we are getting parking people enforcement out on the streets straight away. And that's just, as more people come into the city, we need to make parking available and get that movement across the city. And also, of course, you'll know our consenting people have been operating 100% of their services right through the alert levels. They are now able to step up and do more of the site visits, the physical meetings, the hearings, etc. So it's a very busy few days for us, but actually all the staff are incredibly excited about being able to get back and serve the community. So that's probably about it for me. The only other thing to mention is elected members, and we are re-standing up community boards as the decision was made last week, and actually looking at more support we can give out to those community boards to support their community. So that's probably it. The last two slides are just a reminder about what are the key rules in alert level 2. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, councillors, are there any questions of Mary? Jimmy Chen and Yanni Johansson.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Yes, Mary, may I ask you one question? Because based on your presentation, tomorrow council will open to almost all the indoor, outdoor our facility. But I'm particularly concerned based on the government announcement, even during the alert level 2, still need to be avoid the social distancing. So I'm concerned how the council, whether we have sufficient task force staff to monitoring those enforcement of keep those social distancing, and also particular indoor facility like sport recreation the facility, whether we test those customer, whether they the high temperature, flu, etc. This is my concern. How do we to prevent from this the effect? Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. If you could respond to that question, thank you.
Right. Okay, look, every single one of our facilities has had to develop their own re-establishment plan and health and safety plan. So we've been very strict and clear about that. They've all had their stand-up plans and a strict health and safety plan. Many of them have been spending the last few days, or most of them, moving things around in their facilities. So gyms, spacing out that gym equipment, the libraries again, moving things around to make sure that people have that social distancing. They're also having notices and actually around about reminding people about their own personal hygiene. There'll be places where people can wash their hands regularly, and there'll be a number of staff moving around each of those facilities to actually reinforce that social distancing. We will also be restricting the numbers going into the facility to ensure they're not getting overcrowded. So they all have been very mindful of it and have spent the last sort of week rearranging place, training staff, putting systems in place to ensure that we adhere to all the COVID-19 requirements.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Yanni and Sam.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the update. It's really good to see a section on the reopening of the sports fields, but I think it's been a bit of confusion with the announcement to go to level 2, whether community sport could resume. Do you have any sense of a date by which we're aiming to get the sports fields open for the clubs to use, and when the sports can actually begin?
It's varying across the sports fields, so we can give you not probably run through the 322 today, but different fields are opening in a different phased way. We're still getting some clarity and guidance from central government about the stand-up of different sports. So we can certainly give you an update on which codes are opening and starting when, and which sports fields are opening when, but probably not today.
Yeah, no, I think that would be quite useful for people. And just, I know that there's been a letter come in around the fees and charges. So I think, we do charge for some of the codes to use our sports fields. And I just wondered if any work had been done on what the implications are of, the clubs being able to afford it, or whether the impact in terms of subsidisation.
So we haven't had any feedback directly about that, apart from you would have been aware of the one across Canterbury Rugby, but the rest of them we haven't had any direct feedback, but we are working with them. So we will continue to check in with that and report back if there are any issues, and report back to council with any issues or proposals around that.
Thank you. I've got Sam and then Sarah.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. Just a really quick one, and thanks for everything you've done. I think you've been a real standout for the last 7 weeks. While everyone's been out of the building, it's been awesome. Hey, on the food parcels, would you just be able to clarify for me? So we've obviously issued quite a lot. Do we recover that money from central government?
Yes, yeah, all that money is recoverable, as well as the funding that's been given directly to some of the food banks. So it's all recoverable, and we have that that agreement documented. It's out through the central government to all the EOCs.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Yes, it's part of the civil defence response. It's not a council response. Yeah, thank you. Sarah, Mike and Aaron.
2 quick things. Firstly, just following from Yanni's one, with the community groups, that pays the leases and rent to us part of the 3-month drop in fees that we'd agreed at the beginning of the lockdown?
Yes, yep, that's correct.
So they've had 3 months. They're getting this at this time at the moment without paying anything, which is great. And the other one was actually to Dawn and Mary. I've had some feedback from people working in the health sector on how amazing our staff were with helping organise the use of space for testing stations, Leslie Street and other ones, and how really good that relationship and the work on that has been, and they've been really appreciative. So, yeah.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. Mike?
Thanks. Kia ora, Mary. Just a question. Will the water filling stations at Burnside and Keys be reopened under level 2?
They're not being reopened at the moment, and that's just because of health and safety issues about they can't guarantee the cleaning between and health and safety. So if Dave's on the line, he could probably give you a bit more of an update around the thinking around that. Are you there, Dave?
I sure am. I'm sorry. I've just got to unmute myself. Yes, we've got concerns around obviously social distancing, also the number of people that might gather around them. So we are proposing at this stage not to open them under level 2, but we'll look at what we can do under level 1.
Thank you. I've got Aaron and Anne.
Yeah, Mary, mine is a water question, but it's around the swimming pools, and John may answer this. And it's just I had a couple of parents ask me, with pools reopening and people in the water, and some of them sweat and do other things, does COVID die in swimming pool water with our level of chlorine?
So there's some advice coming from Rec and Sport around the number of people that can be in each lane and the number of people in pools. Our advice from the Medical Office of Health is that actually potentially the dosing of chlorine within pools is unlikely to be actually transmitted through pools. There's no evidence of it to date, but we can give you the report and advice around that. So Nigel, who's head of our Recreation and Sports here, has been working very closely with the Recreation Sports Association, and so the government would not be reopening pools if there was any risk of actually it being transmitted through water.
Yeah, you did use the word unlikely, which doesn't help some parents. So if we could find out for sure, even if we can get something from an epidemiologist or something, because it'd be nice on our facilities as you walk in that people just know for sure whether COVID is dead with the amount of chlorine. I mean, there's plenty of chlorine in there. My eyes water just entering the building, so hopefully.
We'll put something on our website that is confirming. There's no way that the Ministry of Health, you'll see how cautious they've been during this pandemic. There's no way that we'll be opening our pools if there was any risk, or allowing us to open our pools if there was any risk, but we'll put something up on our website.
Yeah, it might be good. We've got 3 members of the District Health Board sitting here, so maybe it's something that they could raise at the District Health Board meeting as well. That would be really great. Thank you. And let us know how you get on. Anne?
Kia ora. Thank you, Mary, and acknowledgement for the huge amount of work that has been done here. It's been amazing. I understand that we've got about 2 million coming for to distribute to food banks. I'm just interested, how do you determine which food banks get the support? I've had an email, some others may have, from Food Bank Canterbury that distribute feed 5,000 people, and apparently they have not been eligible for any of that funding. So just wondering if you could clarify that a bit for us, please.
So that's been done through our EOC, and my understanding was that I actually, perhaps I should get the exact information back to you rather than what my understanding was. I'll make sure I'm 100% correct before I give you that advice. So I will provide some advice around back to you about that.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. I think that's all the questions. I'll just wrap it up, really following on from, a number of you have said it, is that congratulations, Mary. I think you and the team have done an extraordinary job. It's been so comforting having these weekly updates. And, you know, the questions that have been put to you, answers have been found, things that the organisation hasn't thought of, they've been quick to respond to. Everyone's bent over backwards. I'm so proud of how the organisation has responded. And, you know, I mean, we've got a long way to go yet in terms of the recovery, but the response, I just want to say congratulations to you and to the whole team. It's just been outstanding. So, and if you're in the room, I'd be leading a round of applause for you, but, you know, just a virtual round of applause, perhaps. Oh, no, everyone wants to. Thanks very much for that. So thank you, Mary. So would someone like to move that we receive the update? Jimmy Chen, seconded by Sarah Templeton. I will put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the financial performance report for the 9 months ending 31 March 2020. It does contain a brief update on the April results. I understand that we've got Diane Brandish online in order to take us through the report.
Good morning, and thank you. Can I check first that people can hear me?
Loud and clear.
Thank you. Right, so the information in this report has been circulated there. It won't come as a surprise to many people. As the Mayor just said, it was originally the March report where we were forecasting a deficit that had increased from the break-even in December up to 5.2, which built in the expected initial results as a result of knowing we had to close down for COVID-19, and then we've updated it for April now because of the increase, which is up to 33.2, and that's we have assumed there will be no final CCHL dividend. It's not yet confirmed, but we will looking to take a cautious approach. You'll note too, I draw your attention to paragraph 4.1, where we've said what's happened, what we've done to try and reduce costs further, and in particular 4.1.4. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Andrew, did you want to respond as the Chair of the Finance and Performance Committee, and then I'll ask Sam if he's got anything that he'd like to add.
Yeah, thank you. Certainly very happy to make some comments. So this is the regular financial performance report, which would normally come to the Finance and Performance Committee. But this particular paper is obviously of particular interest because of its contents. This is the first time that we see the effect of COVID-19 and the lockdown as we currently understand it on this year's budget. So budgets to the year end 30th of June 2020. And of course on forecasting, so situation to the end of April, but then forecasting to the end of this financial year. Now, as Di has said, this is expected to leave a $33.2 million shortfall by the end of the financial year. It doesn't take an expert to see what's currently happening at Christchurch International Airport, or more to the point, what's not happening at Christchurch International Airport, to see why we would be planning a significant reduction in the dividend from the airport, and in fact why we're currently planning for no dividend from CCHL for the rest of this financial year, resulting in a deficit versus forecasting of 26.3 million. That dividend is unlikely to be paid. There's a further shortfall caused by loss of revenue as a result of our facilities being closed during the lockdown period. It's important to note, though, that all of the figures I've just talked about and that Diane has presented are as a result of the COVID-19 situation. From a $6 million deficit back in October 2019, we'd got ourselves to a position in February where we were back in the black and forecasting a positive year-end result. The figures that we're looking at now are brought about purely as a result of the COVID-19 situation. It's this that's going to cause a rework of the annual plan that we'll be discussing as part of item 9 today. Paragraph 4.14 details savings and cost reduction work which is already underway as a result of the situation that's just been described. The other significant matter that's noted in the report is the effect of the lockdown period on capital project delivery, again for reasonably obvious reasons. So whilst this is the regular report that the committee would receive, the content of this report really calls out some matters which are anything other than regular.
Thank you, Sam.
Oh, thank you. I probably don't need to say too much other than I just think it's really good to mention what Diane had in terms of some of those immediate actions we've taken in terms of a hiring freeze, a reduction in contractors, and that sort of review of operating expenditure just to get us till the end of June. And as Andrew mentioned, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out that the dividends are going to have a massive impact. And obviously going forward, we just need to look at the reliance we place on them as the core structure. So, this kind of is what it is in a way, and we just need to work through the next financial year and see what we can do.
Thank you. Now, are there any questions from councillors? Yanni?
Yeah, thanks. I did put a question in ahead of the meeting around the Ferry Road Wolston Master Plan Village project. I don't know if anyone...
Sorry, Yanni, this is the financial performance report.
Yeah, so
it's not in relation to specific projects.
We're being asked to carry forward that funding.
Yanni, it's not. We're receiving the report and noting the brief update on the April results. This is not a matter for discussion today. So we'll take that offline, and thank you very much for raising it. Are there any questions that are relevant to the matter before us today? There appear to be. Jimmy?
But even, it's not a specific project, but I'm particularly concerned quite a few projects in the council owned is carry forward a part the kind of the budget, because due to all the lost progress is kind of delay, defer, etc. I just want to know how do we to focus on those master schedule. If behind the schedule,
Jimmy, I can interrupt and answer the question, which is not now. Yes. So that's a very simple answer. This question is the financial performance report for the 9 months ending 31 March 2020. It is a receiving the information and noting a very brief update on the April results. We are going to start the detailed analysis of our annual plan in the next few days. So, they start tomorrow. So we will have the opportunity to talk through all of these issues.
Yes.
All right?
Okay. Thank you.
Now, Andrew, are you happy to move the report be received? Seconded by Sam. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Di. That's very much appreciated.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the 2020-21 annual plan process, and the person presenting on that is Ian Thompson and Peter Ryan. So I'm not sure who wants to begin with this. Oh, Ian Thompson has arrived in the room.
I meant to have a haircut before, I'm sorry.
Are you able to turn the microphone on with it and maintain a meter's distance from Jimmy Chen?
It's okay.
We always knew Ed was a guy to get one. I think you should, just for a bit of humour.
All right, I have this. I have this in hand, and I'm prepared to measure distances. All right.
Okay. Do you want me to use it?
I know that I look like the school mum that I feel like sometimes up here, but that's here for that reason only. Thank you.
Leanne, for a moment, that sort of reminded me of that Dunedin video last week, so just be careful.
I can assure you that I'm fully attired, and it is not a feather duster.
I think I see Peter's up there.
Yes.
Perhaps I'll let you kick off, Peter.
Peter, would you like to begin?
Sure, thank you.
Look, I'm not going to rehash the financials that you just discussed in Di's item. Obviously, the effects are profound. We need to make those impacts and implications clear to the community. That will mean consulting again. We've had discussions with the councillors on this on an informal basis on how we would do that. There are legal issues at foot, and Ian has provided a detailed report, and there's another draft opinion this morning. But there's also good faith considerations around giving the community a fair go at understanding what we're trying to change and why, and giving them the opportunity to provide feedback. The process you have here in front of you is common to a number of New Zealand councils. It's almost identical to what Auckland calls their emergency budget. It is tight in the sense that we are trying to create, approve, consult, receive submissions and hearings on this, and also make a decision by the end of July. That's a much shorter time frame than we would normally employ, but we're having to go a second time, and that's why. The end of July is a hard deadline, because if we do not approve a new annual plan by then, there will be significant complexity around rates and rating for the city. So to sum up the compressed timeline, we were looking to adopt a new approach on the 29th of May, to consult with the community between the 12th and the 29th of June, which is possibly a longer period than is strictly required, but is really there to demonstrate good faith and opportunity. Oral submissions will also be received during that same period, so simultaneously rather than sequentially. In terms of the hearings, I've just had a discussion with John Filsell about providing some options back to the councillors tomorrow on how the hearings can be handled. We normally don't have the capacity to deal with those sorts of numbers in such a short space, so we'll need to provide some clever and agile options to the councillors on how to handle that, and then adopt by the 30th of July. So that's essentially a quick overview of the process. It's never been done before. It will be tight, and it will require a great deal of cooperation between staff and councillors on process and decision making. It is doable, but it's extremely tight.
Sure. I just had one question, and that is in relation to the proposal to develop a manner and format for the hearing of oral submissions. And rather than passing that resolution in the form that it's in, because it could create an impression that we might do this in exactly the same way for everyone who wants to be heard, or that it may not present options that we've had an opportunity to look at.
I understand.
People will want to know. So what I'm just wondering is whether we could replace that submission with a request to staff to provide additional advice to the next meeting of council, which proposes options for the manner and format, or the format or formats. The options might be better. Staff to provide advice at the next council meeting as to the options available for hearing submissions in relation to the annual plan, given the constraints on time, and then that would just give us an opportunity to perhaps express some of the ideas that we might have as to how that could be managed in a way that is both democratic but also manageable, given the constraints on time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is that all right?
Okay. That's no problem at all.
Fine. Thanks. Aaron?
Yes, I just had some questions around timing, because all the people who would have submitted prior to the COVID lockdown would have been submitting on the council's BAU, business as usual. So we shouldn't be expecting them to submit again, because the people that want those things already have. So it's the people who would be submitting on the extraordinary circumstances, and they would know that by now. Why would we have such a long consultation period of the month? Why would we not go to the minimum to allow ourselves more time for hearings?
So actually, you raise a very good point, because I just
we can buy another week or two.
But that identifies that councillors haven't read all the submissions yet. I read the Central City Business Association submission, and it is absolutely a group that we would want to hear from.
Yep.
It is quite different from the idea that they were submitting on a BAU or a non-BAU environment. They were talking about what they could do as a group to actually transform the way that we support businesses in the inner city. So I wouldn't rule out one or the other, because there will be some whose submission, probably needs to be fundamentally rethought in the light of the reality of the financial situation that we find ourselves in. But Peter, perhaps you've read the submissions. I've only just read the one so far. So
to quickly cover that point, not everything in the submissions from earlier in the year is about BAU.
Yeah.
So they're a mixed bag. Some of them are about ideas that weren't actually in the draft annual plan, and so they're probably just as relevant now as they were then. In terms of the timing, it's not a month, it's actually 2 weeks that we're going out for consultation on the second round. And the logic of that was discussed with the councillors. The idea of a 1 week consultation during that discussion was not very well supported, as it's very, very brief time for a member of the public to understand what's being proposed, figure out what they want to respond with, and actually find the time to respond as well. So 2 weeks was seen as, it's a big cutback from the normal 1 month, but 1 week was seen as a bridge too far. So I guess it's the just right. It's a councillor decision, but that's what the steer we had when we had discussed this with councillors.
I think the point that I think Aaron also makes is that that we make the decision of what we go out with on the 29th of May, but it's then 2 weeks to get the consultation document ready. So I'm just wondering whether that full 2 weeks is required.
We've done this a large number of times now, and the reason that period is there is, firstly, there's a lot of weekends in it, and there's also a public holiday. The working days are not as great as they look. But in that time, we normally have to reflect the changes that council has made in its decision and run them through the financial documents, as well as making sure the CD reflects those budget items. The opportunity to get the information wrong is pretty high.
Well, maybe this is something that we could also reflect on next meeting as well. I'm happy for this to proceed as it is, but it may be that the consultation document can be ready ahead of the actual detailed amendments to the financial strategy and the infrastructure strategy.
Peter, let me add to that, if you don't mind. We are concurrently working up the consultation document, Mayor, but there's got to be some realism in terms of the time, once we work through all of the suggestions that we're going to do over the next 5 workshops, to be able to distill all of that information that you're going to give us and get that into a comprehensive consultation document. That timescale is tight.
Yeah,
to reduce that, we will make mistakes.
Which is why I'm saying that it's okay to pass it the way it is, but I still want us to be thinking about if there's a quicker way of doing things, which just signal to the public about what the changes actually are. But anyway, that's...
Could I just maybe clarify that a bit there? The consultation document has to reflect accurate financials, and the financials normally completely alter after the council meeting. So the changes to the capital program rates, they ripple through very large documents. And Diane will have a view on this, on how feasible it is to turn that around in short time. We've never done it in a period shorter than that is described here.
And if I could add, please, the consultation document must include the rates decimals, and the rates decimals are the very last thing we prepare after we've run all the information back through the financial system. At the moment, these scenarios are being done offline, and it takes quite a lot of time to input the data, run the balance sheet view, and come up with something that we know doesn't leave us in a hold for years 2 and 3. Now, obviously we've done much of that in advance. What will move it along is if we are able next week, as we progress through the workshops, to get a clearer view of what the council is thinking. That enables us to get more information into the system earlier, but that would still only allow us to come up with something within the current timeline that we know we can live with. We just couldn't possibly turn it around in a week. The problem is we don't have automatic systems. Our systems are very manual still.
The preparation time is in fact about a week in terms of available working time, and it would be very hard for us to do it faster than that and not make a mistake, which would compromise the consultation.
Right, well, that's all good. So, Sam.
Thanks, Peter, and I'm not sure if it's a question for you or for Dawn. Just in terms of the timeline, I'm just keen to understand that, I guess, by approving it today, we're not precluding any options. Is that fair to say? So we're not going to agree to a timeline today, but then be boxed into a specific position, or not be able to achieve, I guess, some of the other views that have been shared around the table? Do you have any comments on that? If that makes sense.
As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't preclude any option. It's simply a process. It's not content. But Dawn might like to add to that.
We are looking at all the scenarios that we've been asked to look at. Clearly, ELT will be making a recommendation to members as we work through that, and then into the report that we put on the 29th of May once we've had our dialogue. But we have to have some realism, I think it's fair to say, about what those options really are in light of the changes of COVID-19. So that's what I would suggest to you that you need to really think about, because the world that you were in even 8 weeks ago is fundamentally different now. So what may have been seen to be a proposal, and if I will say this from a perspective of just simple maths of 0%, I think will be very unrealistic to be able to achieve.
Okay, so it doesn't preclude the options, so that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. James and Yanni.
Thanks. I guess just on a slightly different vein, but with that same theme, if it doesn't preclude pulling any of those levers, is there any risk that we have of adopting this prematurely, given that we're going to go through a first cut sort of draft workshop with what levers are at our disposal tomorrow? So is there anything, to put it another way, is there anything that could arise tomorrow which could then make us regret then signing off on a time frame today?
It's very hard to speculate on that, but if circumstances change, you could always revisit the timeline. There's nothing that would stop council from saying, look, with new information's at hand, we need to do this differently. But there are some significant drivers behind why this timeline needs to conclude at the end of July. And Diane can explain a bit more about the rating implications for the city and the rates notices. We're trying to avoid a situation where council finds itself in a confusing situation around rates.
Okay, that's really helpful and actually does answer my question though, Peter, so thank you.
And we have sought your advice in terms of your view around that in our discussions, hence why the timetable is as it is.
Perfect.
Yanni?
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to check in terms of the ability for community boards to be involved in setting the priorities, what the thinking is around that, and whether or not in terms of the information that's going to be produced, if there will be a ward or a board sheet that shows which projects are still going ahead. Thank you.
Well, we normally try to provide a capital program view by wards, as we did, I think, in the earlier draft. And boards always have the option of making submissions on any proposal, and those submissions are always considered with great seriousness. In terms of determining what goes in the consultation document, at the moment that's seen as a decision for council, and I don't see that that's any different from our normal process that we normally follow. So to answer your question, council will determine what goes in the consultation, and boards have every opportunity to respond to that with submissions or spoken submissions.
Right, but just normally as part of our annual plan, we would get with the boards first and get some ideas about, the priorities. So we're not going to have a chance to do that as part of this process.
I think we did that for the first draft. I'm not. There hasn't been any mention of doing that for this second emergency process.
Maybe we can talk about that tomorrow. Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Jimmy Chen.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Still need to confirm the particular regarding to all those summations, the time frame between the 12th of June till the 29th of June. But even we emphasize, all those overall summation still need to be before the 29th of June. But I'm concerned if they submitted to the council is 28, even before the due date, 29th of June, how do we to organize this oral submission? This one we still need to be considered. The other one is particular, all the new revised consultation document were put onto the public consultation on the 12th of June. But even before original the consultation document, 130 prefer like to be heard. But probably we can remind them because they heard this original one. A new one, whether they still prefer to be heard or not. If not, we can cancel all those oral submissions. Then we can keep the time schedule because this time schedule is very, very tight.
That's true. And look, to tackle them in order, normally we would have a submissions period open, and at the end of it, we would close and summarise those submissions for councillors. We don't have that luxury in this process of doing things in a linear, sequential fashion. So what we'll be doing is providing, if you like, a live time view as the submissions come in during the period 12th to the 29th. We'll be updating councillors regularly, if not daily, on what's been received, so that when the submissions close, there's an accurate snapshot of what's happened. We can't afford to then take another couple of weeks to think about and summarise those submissions. So it'll be a live time view. In some respects, this is good. It's pushing us to look at new process. So you will have simultaneous view of the submissions and what their summary says while the period is open. As to the second part, can you just clarify the second part of the question for me, please?
Second part is because the original consultation document, 130, the submissions, they prefer to be heard. But whether it's necessary or not, we need to remind them.
Excuse me, Councillor Chen, I've already asked that be amended to come back with options for the hearing of submissions. So I do not want questions asked today. We will have answers and we will have discussed options by the time this comes back on the 28th of May. Please?
Yeah, I know, but we need to approve this process time schedule today.
Thank you. Yes. Is that all right? Understood.
I fully understood, but I'm concerned today we need to approve this one.
You are suggesting that you don't understand that I have amended number 5. It now says request staff to provide advice to the next council meeting. Can we have that up on the screen? Oh, it is up on the screen. Can we read that together? Request staff to provide advice to the next council meeting on the options available for the hearing of submissions to the draft 2020-21 annual plan, given the constraints on time. We are not going to pass a resolution about that today. All right? Thank you. I've tried to be helpful to the organisation and to the councillors, so please follow the agenda. Anne.
Thank you. Just given the time constraints and the importance of this annual plan, is there a comms plan around this, and how has it been adjusted to kind of address those issues? Thanks, Di.
Yes, there is. We've been working with Di Keenan and Katie McRae in the comms team. There is a comms plan around this to communicate to people why we're going out again, what the drivers are, that we need to be transparent about what the implications and impacts will be and what we're proposing, and especially to give them the clarity of what the process is and what the window is for comment, and the fact that it's a tight timeline. So those people who submit, say, 2 weeks late, it may be difficult for them to be heard if they're simply late coming to the party.
And we've already started that communication out to stakeholders, to partners, to residents through our communications team and from letters from myself as well.
Thank you. And just to follow up, using the networks that we have, for example, the multicultural networks, those sorts of things, they're all part of that. Great. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, thank you. The Chief Executive.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to stress to members the amount of effort and work that has happened over the last 4 weeks by the officers in your organisation, whether that's the leadership team, the finance services, our communication services and Peter and his team across the board, because it has been such a major change for us as an authority in terms of what it is we are going to be able to do. And that has been done at immense pace and very long hours to get you to a position whereby we can bring forward detailed options for the annual plan, which I know we will be working very closely with you for the next 2.5 weeks, which will mean through very detailed dialogue that we will have a plan available to be able to put out in the timescale that I think we can, if we can get that conversation right.
Thank you. I'd like to move that we approve the process as set out on the amended recommendations, seconded by Andrew Turner. Any discussion? I'll put them. Andrew Turner.
Thank you. And just very briefly, just picking up on the Chief Executive's comments, I'd also like to acknowledge what has been a huge amount of work that has been done by Dawn and her team, by the organisation in extraordinary circumstances, both financially extraordinary and physically extraordinary, the ability for people to work remotely and be working in unprecedented times, as well as on the matters that we've been discussing this morning, certainly deserves some recognition. This is the point, or tomorrow is the point at which that baton passes to us as elected members, where we've got to start considering that huge amount of work that has been done. We've talked about tight deadlines. We need to make sure that we work hand in hand with the organisation as we work through the various issues, not all of which will be easy, and that we do stick to the deadlines that we're approving today, so that we are able to go back out for a sensible conversation with our community. And we're setting a deadline today of approving the annual plan by the end of July. In the circumstances that we're in, that will represent a significant achievement. What by the end of that period will have been a huge amount of work, not only by the organisation, but by ourselves as elected members.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you. I'll move straight on to the long-term plan 2021 program update, April 2020. It's my intention that we'll take a short break for morning tea after that. But it just seems to me with everyone online, Peter, Ryan obviously will play a significant role in this update as well, that we might as well continue with that. And I see that we've been joined by Gary Moore in his role as the chair of the External Advisory Group, which we appointed some months ago. So thank you, Gary, for joining us. And I'm now going to hand over to our Chief Executive, who is the program sponsor for the LTP 2031. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So we've talked regularly, haven't we, in the last few weeks around the fact that we've been dealing with COVID-19 and we're dealing with the annual plan. But what we have also been doing is keeping the LTP work on track, and that is what this report is telling you. What I am pleased, though, is the approach that we have continued to take in being open and transparent and utilising the EAG to help us think differently. We've opened our books and allowed them to go all over virtually our organisation, and I have challenged the chair and the team to be bold and brave in helping us to be bold and brave. So as the sponsor of the LTP programme, I meet with the team every 2 weeks. We've been doing that virtually, including the last meeting doing a deep dive into a good asset management plan, one maybe not as strong, and same with our activity plan, and again not as strong. So we're trying to make sure we keep the momentum. But I would also say we've drawn on that work that we've been doing for the LTP to help us with the annual plan and see that as a golden thread going through. So that's what I would like to just set the tone, Mayor and members, and I'd like to pass over to Peter and Gary now. Thank you.
Dawn. Look, just to hit the highlights from the report, as Dawn mentioned, despite the circumstances, we've maintained momentum. The project has moved forward and is still essentially on its timeline to deliver a solid draft of LTP documents for June, with 1 or 2 exceptions, but I'll come to those in a moment. Some recent changes is the emphasis on COVID-19 response in the LTP documents. They can't assume business as usual. They have to take into account those changes. The IS, the infrastructure strategy, is travelling well. There have been a series of briefings with councillors. That's been very positively received on the direction it's taking, and it's on track to deliver for June. The financial strategy is a little more problematic because we need to understand a bit more about where the annual plan will land. However, that's still progressing. Asset management plans are progressing, and while the quality varies a little, as Dawn just explained, we will expect to have those for you in June, as well as the rest of the suite of documents. Capital prioritisation has gone well. Dawn briefed the external advisory group on that last night, and the progress that has made, as well as deliverability of the capital program and the analysis around that. Probably the thing that will be most obvious as missing from the suite of documents next month will be budgets, LTP budgets, because the annual plan is still in flux. Now, they will be provided as quickly as they can, but we need to get the annual plan right first. Had it not been for all of that, then those budgets would be there. Activity plans are on track, and we expect activity managers to have them signed off for you as a first draft, not a final, for next month. And the external advisory group has been meeting regularly each fortnight. It has been providing challenge questions to staff. It's been receiving those responses, and it's been making preliminary recommendations. Discussions are underway about an interim report back to council next month when the draft suite of LTP documents land. And at that point, it might be good to hand over to Gary Moore, who is to provide a brief update on the EAG. Are you there, Gary?
Yep, I am. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Mayor and councillors. The external advisory group, we've met 3 times. I have to say that the difference between this time with the external advisory group and last time is like night and day. And we have access to absolutely everything. And we've had huge support from Dawn and Peter and their teams. And for that, we're very grateful. Our meetings have been by Zoom so far. The chair and the deputy chair of the finance committee have attended the 3 meetings we've had, as has Phil Major, who sat there saying nothing, which I think is possibly a miracle. And then what we've done is we've broken our work into portfolios, playing to the skill of the different members of the EAG. So far, we've started looking at infrastructure and the capital program. We've looked at the strategic planning unit. We're looking at the Economic Development Agency and the need for one agency. We are going to be moving into IT sooner or later. All of our questions are in the big tin can, which is available for councillors to have a look at. We've had some responses from staff, and the next meeting we'll have people in front of us so we can continue asking questions. We've been looking at the amount of money that the council's spending on consultants, external consultants, and I think I was trying to think of a way of explaining how I think we're approaching our work. And if I could use a metaphor of a grapevine, if you allow a grapevine to continue growing, it throttles out new growth and and doesn't produce any grapes. And so you've got to prune grapes at grapevines on a regular basis. And some laterals produce new fruit, and some laterals have gone past their productive stage. And the city council's possibly like a grapevine right now. And you can brutally use a chainsaw to cut the top off, but you could remove future fruit or fruit that's very productive. But our role is to clinically remove laterals which are past their use-by date and enable the vine to flourish in the future. So that our advice will be just coming to you as elected members. We will be saying we think this lateral is probably past its use-by date, or we will be saying this one is fine, and it's up to you to make the decision. But the beauty of the external advisory group is we've got no elected group to play to. We're not involved in the bureaucracy, and we come with a lot of experience that we can actually devote the time that you don't have the time to devote to looking in great depth. So that is my report.
Thank you very much. Peter, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
No, the recommendations are pretty straightforward. We're on track for June. Probably the key thing is that the COVID impacts have been built in, and that we do need to re-establish the briefings with councillors. I mean, to get to this point, there are literally hundreds of staff who have contributed to the documents to hit June. The aim has always been to give councillors June to November to move through them in a considered way rather than a burdensome way. To make that happen, we actually now need to get the logistics around the meetings back in place.
Thank you. Well, again, just compliments to the team. It's extraordinary how much you've been able to continue to do in the background with all of the other challenges that we're facing in terms of the response to this. This is important. We established early on in the process that we needed to get on top of the LTP process early in order to make a meaningful process for the next LTP. So I really appreciate the team, and I appreciate, Gary, if you could pass on to the external advisory group our gratitude for this. So I'm just going to ask Andrew if he wanted to say any words, and also Sam McDonald. I'm also going to invite Councillor Major to reflect as well, because I would like to spend time asking how you've managed to keep him quiet for so long, but I will take that one offline. Thank you, Mr. Moore. So, Andrew.
Great, thank you. Peter, thank you very much indeed for this report, and thanks to everybody who's been involved with the report and the preparation of all of the work that's gone into it. I'm absolutely delighted to hear that despite the disruption that we've been facing, both with the COVID-19 situation and people working from home, but also all of the work that's gone into the preparation of new work for the annual plan, this long-term plan work programme remains on track, and certainly pick up the comments that a lot of the work that we're doing around the annual plan will feed particularly into the financial strategy that will inform the long-term plan. But thank you for all of the, again, huge amount of work which has been done. Good to hear that the infrastructure strategy is in a good place, and I've always had a concern around the alignment of the various strategies and programmes of work, and I remain comfortable that we're on track and we're in a good space. So thank you very much indeed for being able to report that to us today. Just on the EAG, and I'm sure I speak for the other elected members who've been attending those meetings as well, I am very confident that the EAG is already showing its value. The experience and the knowledge and the skill and the passion around that table is apparent at every meeting. and the discussions are of a good quality. The challenge questions that were referred to earlier certainly are probing in a respectful but very necessary way. And just reflecting Gary's comment on night and day, there's a very open and collaborative approach which has been taken, which is very well supported by our Chief Executive, and one in which I've got a large amount of confidence. I look forward to seeing the grapevine, Gary, that you referred to, bearing some good fruit that we can enjoy when you give us your final report.
Thank you, Sam.
Look, I'll just hand over to Phil. I think I'd be far more interested in what he's got to say than what I have. So.
Thank you. Phil.
Thank you very much. It's actually, I do struggle with not having something to say at the meeting, but you listen, and the calibre of the guys, people that are there, is great. There are no holes barred. There's no forbidden ground. You go there, and it's a breath of fresh air to listen to the problems being aired out, amongst these guys with no inhibitions or anything. So it's a reason why I wanted to get on to council, and hopefully their recommendations will be listened to by all of us, and I'm looking forward to being involved a bit longer if I can keep my mouth shut.
Excellent. No, thank you very much for that. And I know that it was a decision to involve you that was outside the approach that was adopted. But thank you, Gary, to you and the team for welcoming Phil's presence. There will be a time when you will have an opportunity to talk directly with the EAG. We will, as a council, because they're advising us, and they'll be early into the LTP process and providing us with that feedback and advice. So thank you very much. Yanni, question.
Thank you, and thank you for the work that you're doing. So I couldn't find the questions on the Big Tin Can, and you may have already discussed this. I was just wondering how you're using the resident survey to inform your thinking.
Yeah, that's a good question, Yanni, and I raised that at the last EAG, not this week, but 2 weeks ago, because I know that when I sat in your place, the council used the resident survey as the most accurate way of telling the mood of the people of Christchurch, and so we haven't got it yet, but I have asked for it, and I don't. Has it in front? It's been in front of the council, has it? I don't know. Is it
next week?
Right. Okay. So when you get it, we'll get it, and that'll be something in the back of our minds as we look at expenditure. The whole area of the capital program is we've got a real expert there, and how much the council can afford for a capital program is really quite important. And what drives a capital program are the levels of service. And those levels of service may not reflect what the public is actually requiring now. And so there's a lot of work for everybody in going back and finding the drivers of costs. And that's the sort of thing that we'll be paying attention to.
Thank you. Jimmy Chen.
One question that particular in this report, I emphasize all those the long-term plan, the draft document will be ready by 1st of June. However, the long-term plan, all those documents will be affected by the annual plan. Annual plan probably also, will be affected by the long-term plan. I just want to know, first question is whether the information is consistent information. Second is because the annual plan, there's the options, then the council will be make decision which option is the preferred option, then go ahead by the 29th of May. So only after 2 days, all those the document probably has to be revised, whether the timing is sufficient or not. Not only the budget, I'm concerned with the capital program prioritization, even infrastructure strategy, asset management, all will be, the review and amend it. So this is my concern.
Can I deal with that?
Yes,
Please.
please, Chief. Thank you.
So, Councillor Chen, I fully understand the nature of your question, but what I said earlier on I think is still very valid. We're utilising the information and the approach that we've taken in the LTP, and we've drawn that back into the work that we're doing on the annual plan. The other thing I would stress to you, unlike what we're having to do with the annual plan, which is in a matter of days and weeks, we have several months between June and up to November to actually unpick everything and make sure it's right. What you will be getting are solid documents, not finished documents. And I've used that word advisedly to the team and to yourselves, which allows us then to adjust and adapt in these very unique circumstances. So I understand your concern. I personally am not concerned about that because I expect it to evolve as we go through. You must remember it's not the summer, the winter time.
Thank you. James Daniels.
Just a quick question. Who are the members of the EAG? I don't think it's in the paper. Just as a matter of... you look at me like I can't ask.
No, we've adopted it, and I don't know them off the top of my head.
Gary will be able to.
Gary, can you run through the list of the members?
Names are terrible with me.
Andrew, have you got? Do you know the list?
Mark Christensen, Jen Crawford.
Oh, that's right.
Mark's an engineer. Jen's a
Lawyer.
Jen's a lawyer and a lot of governance experience. Louise Edwards, who's an accountant, and
the Rata Foundation.
And then Michelle.
yes, and Michelle Sharp, who is an IT expert and a real expert on IT,
Former
and
CEO of,
myself.
Mike Industries. Yeah.
She's now one of the bosses of Vodafone.
Yeah. But
Oh, good. I just think it's important to know
it's-
who it is. That
well, we passed them in a public meeting.
I know
of the
that,
council,
but
so, yeah.
for now, for anyone reading it today.
I agree, and look, you've actually caught me out because it's a question I asked myself I was asked on the radio the other day, and I didn't have the list in front of me. So you're raising a question that is of generic interest, and thank you for doing so. I would have been better prepared if I'd thought it through. Gary, thank you very much. Peter, thank you very much. Would someone like to move that the report be, or move the resolutions there? And I've got Andrew Turner and Mike Davidson. I'll open that up for discussion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much, and thank you, Gary. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Chief. So, as I promised, 11:29, we will adjourn for a desperately needed cup of coffee in my instance, but for others, whatever you are able to go and find for yourself. Morning tea is not provided, and we can't invite our guests here to stay for morning tea. You have to get your own. So the cafe's open downstairs, and people can help themselves. So we'll see you back here. I think I'll start the meeting again at 11:45, which gives everyone time to go and get themselves whatever it is that they want to have for morning tea. I'll ask people to come back to order as we restart the meeting. You'll see that I've put the metre distance that exists between myself and the council secretary, and the reason that I've put that there is to stop people walking through the middle as you breach the metre distance. So please walk around that away in order to exit that door there. So thank you very much for observing that. Okay, so we now move on to the Mayor's report, and as I said, I haven't prepared a Mayor's report as such, but the reason that I left this on the agenda was because I wanted to enable an extension to a current appointment to the Canterbury Museum Trust, which would enable us to make an appointment for the balance of the current council term later in the year, well, particularly after the annual plan is dealt with, and we can focus our attention onto the needs of the Canterbury Museum Trust in terms of the skill set that they're looking for facing a major reinstatement process, as we know. So, I am also going to just make a verbal report, given that this now gives me an opportunity to do so. And there are a few things that I want to talk about. The first thing that I want to speak to is that during the lockdown period, I have been very busy reaching out to a number of community groups and to businesses. Obviously, it's been a time where we haven't been able to meet in person, but it has been an opportunity to consider some of these important issues that have been raised, not just as a result of COVID-19, but actually as a result of a number of other issues that have occurred over recent times. I've enjoyed the opportunity personally to explore the city without the cars covering the street art, and I've actually found some street art that I've never noticed before. So I've had a really good explore of the central city because it is my backyard. I live in the central city, and I have to say it's been the best time really to explore. The weather's been great as well. I couldn't believe that day one of level 2 was sort of a misty fog, disrupting what is usually a beautiful view of Crabner Square. In terms of the community groups, I've had the opportunity to read some resource consent decisions, so I don't normally take the time to do so. It's something that I rely on receiving advice on, and on this particular occasion, resource consent decision came through during the lockdown, and I was able to read it in detail. And this is where my background as a qualified lawyer comes to the fore, because I actually really enjoyed reading the Merivale Lane decision, even though it was a decision that obviously the Merivale residents have not welcomed. The decision itself has been incredibly helpful to help unlock the problem that we have with our district plan. And our district plan problem dates back to the land use recovery plan and a provision that was put into it to facilitate developments in medium density areas called an enhanced development mechanism, and that was put in place to ensure that there was the ability to increase the density while at the same time introducing a cap, but it was over a particular area of land. So you required properties that added up to 1,500 square metres. And then we had when the district plan went through the independent hearings panel, there were two provisions that were put in place. One was for a central city and really a high density area that had a minimum of 50 units per hectare, and the medium density, which was 30, a minimum of 30 units per hectare. The interesting thing is that neither of them have a maximum. and yet the enhanced development mechanism has a maximum of 65. And so on a logical basis, you would assume that the maximum for the medium density as provided for in the district plan would be 50, because that's the minimum for the high density of the central city. And there is no maximum written in there, and there were several occasions when the person who wrote the decision highlighted the challenge that confronted, and in fact he specifically stated in his report that it was unfortunate that this matter had not been dealt with at the time that the district plan was changed after the earthquake. So in my view, this is the key to fixing what's wrong with our district plan, and it is wrong. And if there is one thing that's come from the lockdown that I am so grateful for, is that it has given me time to actually consider in depth the decision that has come through. The timing couldn't be better in that regard, and to help understand and I believe help unlock a way to resolve the problem. I have to say that I want to express my deep gratitude to the members of the community who have dedicated hours of their own time and resources to challenging applications in an RMA environment that does not make community engagement easy. In fact, it makes it very hard. Notification decisions are not prevalent in our environment, and that is because of a structural problem in relation to a preference over development as compared to amenity within neighbourhoods. And that is the essence of the problem that we face as a city. And the only thing that I haven't had time yet to do is to write this all up in order to refer it to the organisation who will be able to provide us with expert support and advice as we seek to amend our district plan. I have also initiated conversations with several inner city business owners, and I have to say that the reason that I began initiating these conversations was because I was somewhat frustrated to find that they were commenting publicly about what they had been told I said rather than what I had actually said. And so once I had the opportunity to explain to people what I had actually said, it led to a very good way of having, again, a deeper set of conversations about the significant challenges that different parts of our city now face. And this has led me to believe that the businesses are not looking for a one-size-fits-all solution. They're looking for bespoke solutions that enable them both to survive, but then ultimately to thrive in the new environment we're going into. Earlier this week, I became aware that the council was looking to reinstate enforcement of car parking fees in the inner city, and I expressed serious concerns about the approach. I then became aware of the business concerns re car parking, and as a result I had a conversation with the chief executive who literally sought advice overnight. I think we were still communicating about 11 o'clock last night was the last email, which, you know, I'd just like to express my gratitude not just to you but to the team who sat in behind providing that advice and further advice this morning. And I have to say that the issue is highly complex. It isn't easy. There isn't a straightforward answer. And what I'm going to do today is to publicly ask the Chief Executive simply to defer the reinstatement of the charging until we can get to the 28th of May meeting, at which point we will have a paper that we can consider properly and take advice across the board. We have a number of challenges at the moment. Buses, for example, public transport is an issue that often stands in the way of making decisions in this space. Buses have to be practising physical distancing in a way that means that they won't have the numbers or the capacity to bring as many people into the CBD. So there are things that we need to be thinking of in that context, but if the Chief Executive's able to do that, then I think that would really help us get through. Now, of course, during the course of the meeting, I, of course, have not been reading my emails because that would be in contradiction to my approach to running these meetings. However, I couldn't help but notice an email come through from Fran Wild, who, of course, as you know, is the chair of the Remuneration Authority. And she advises that, and you have now all received a copy of this through the Office of the Chief Executive, that the government is introducing legislation that gives the Remuneration Authority the ability to reduce remuneration on a temporary basis in line with reductions in the remuneration of other public sector leaders as a response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'm absolutely over the moon that the legislation is being introduced and passed today, as I understand it from the Minister's press release. The authority goes on to say, or Fran Wild goes on to say, that they've restructured local government remuneration to better reflect the relative responsibilities of the different units within the sector, and also committed to a slow increase in remuneration to encourage broader representation of groups who might otherwise not be able to afford to consider running for office. But taking all of that into account, they have been considering, and I know they have been considering this because I have been advocating behind the scenes for this for some time, and I have personally spoken to Fran Wild, whose, as I say, hands have been tied while the legislation remained unamended. They have been considering how they might apply any temporary reduction allowed in the legislation, and have decided that it should apply only to those elected members whose remuneration exceeds $100,000 per annum, so that's everyone around the table. We have also decided that it should be applied on a sliding basis, with higher percentages deducted from the top earners and progressively smaller proportions deducted from remuneration at the bottom end of the scale, i.e. nearer to 100k, and any such deductions would be for a period of 6 months. Because this can't be an across-the-board cut, we will issue a temporary amending determination containing specific figures for named positions. We're aware that many elected members in local government have donated to charity during the period of the COVID-19 lockdown, and we will take this into account if we have had advice from an elected member on the amount of any donation when deciding on an appropriate temporary reduction for each position. All members in the remuneration range outlined above will shortly receive an individual letter from us regarding this proposal. Meanwhile, I'd be grateful if you'd circulate it. So it's great that I've got an opportunity of a meeting to actually explain to people that the process that we've been asking for is now being put in place. You will all receive individual letters from the Remuneration Authority. I've certainly made my position absolutely clear all the way through, and I am anticipating that my pay will be cut by 20% for 6 months at the higher end of, well, certainly at this scale, and I welcome that. I welcome that opportunity to really be in solidarity. It's a solidarity move, and I really appreciate the fact that the government took that step, and I really appreciate that they're passing legislation today to enable us to take that step as well. There was one other thing that I was going to mention, but now I've completely forgotten what it was. So I will invite.
David East.
I've spoken to the David East appointment. So you're happy to move the receipt of the report and the David East appointment. seconded by Pauline Cotter. Any discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is item 13, Plan Change 2, Port Hill Slope Instability Management Areas Overlay Update. And we have Mark Stevenson, who's going to present to us today.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right? Hello, can you hear me?
Sorry, I turned my microphone off, loud and clear. Thank you.
Oh, great. So this report is in respect of a plan change to amend the district plan to align rules with the level of risk for hazards for individual properties. In the case of 84 properties, it's in the context of 84 properties for which the rules will be less restrictive for 83 of those properties. In that regard, it will provide increased certainty to property owners and reduce compliance costs in all but one instance. There's been extensive engagement through the process with property owners. We invited feedback before the formal process of submissions on 2 occasions and have updated property owners last week on where the process is at and that this report will be considered by council. The Commissioner has considered the 6 submissions received, and of which 5 were in support, the 6th being neutral, and has recommended approval of the plan change as was approved by council for notification. So I welcome any questions.
Right, are there any questions? Tim?
Thanks. What's the likely cost to council with this, please?
The cost of the plan change is covered by existing budgets. In terms of what it means for other costs, property owners will bear less costs in terms of any future consent process, and there's going to be an ongoing need to review. As part of any application for resource consent, there'll be a need for review of external geotechnical reports that are prepared, but that's a fully cost recoverable service, so it's covered in that respect. There is, as referred to in paragraph 7.2 of the report, intended to be a rolling review. So as property owners come forward with more information about the risk for their property, they may have completed physical works, or there may be up-to-date technical information which demonstrates there's no longer the risk or a reduced risk, and the review of those technical reports would occur as part of a consent process in any case. Thereafter, any plan change to update the district plan would come to the council for approval, and that would form part of our work program.
So there's no council land involved where the council has to undertake remediation for this to go forward?
No, there's no future work in the context of the 84 properties subject to this report, and I'm aware there has been physical works on the Port Hills that council has been involved in, but for this plan change it doesn't affect any existing council land.
Thank you.
And just my question was just, we did notify the individual property owners that this matter was coming before the council today, and that the recommendation was that we adopt Commissioner Dawson's recommendations. Is that correct? They were notified?
That is right. We emailed the property owners that we have email addresses for to let them know that this report was being considered and that it was to adopt the Commissioner's recommendations. Unfortunately, we weren't able to send letters, but we've done our utmost in terms of communicating via email to the property owners.
Sorry, there was no expectation that that letters would be sent, so really appreciate you taking the initiative to let the individuals know that we would be discussing it today and that the recommendation was in line with the hearing decision. So thank you. Andrew,
thank you.
would you like to move this?
Yeah, I will.
Do I have a seconder? Sarah Templeton. Is there any discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much for your report. Much appreciated. Thank you. Right, the next item on the agenda is item 14, revocation of council decision Martian Road proposed signalised intersection, correction of administrative error. We approved something that we had already, well, wasn't ours to approve. We've delegated the approval to the community boards, I believe. So it says that we have a presenter, but I think people are pretty clear about that this is just a technical requirement. So do I have Phil Major to move, and seconded by Pauline Cotter? That covers the two community boards involved. Any discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much. The establishment of a coastal hazards working group. I don't think I mentioned this at the beginning of the meeting, but I'd like to defer that till after the annual plan. That is, it's part of a bigger piece of work. There are two streams of work that relate to this, and I'd really like to spend a little bit more time for myself to understand how the two are integrated. And yeah, so I think I can on my own. I don't require a motion, do I? I can just let that matter lie. Withdraw the paper, and we'll come back to it after we've dealt with the annual plan, because I really would like us to focus on this. It's a very important issue, but there are two issues in relation to coastal hazards, and one's an adaptation planning approach that engages all of our coastal communities in a really profound way, which I'm very supportive of. The next one is the approval of extension of time for Central City Landmark Heritage Grants for 31 Cathedral Square and 92 Litchfield Street. So I'm not sure if, is it Brendan Smythe who's going to, yes, Brendan Smythe has joined us. Sorry, I have to look at the neighbouring screen in order to see your face. So thank you and welcome, Brendan.
Good afternoon, Mayor, councillors. Is there? I think the reports are fairly clear, and what we're asking for is a extension of time for both of these works, these projects, which are previously approved heritage grants from 18 months ago, which for different reasons have basically run out of time. And the key thing is that we want to keep these works continuing to upgrade and retain these two highly significant buildings. I think with the first one, the Cathedral Square building, there's a fairly straightforward explanation as to why the work stopped, and that was prior to the COVID issue. It was the discovery of some asbestos, which really was quite difficult to remove, but that's been worked through now. And the second building was the 92 Litchfield Street building, where there was an issue with the adjacent site and the potential development of that site, which could have significant impacts on 92 Litchfield Street because of the design of the building. And I've tried to explain that as clear as I could with photographs in the two reports, which show that the building goes round what used to be a private lane, but now is part of the adjacent site. So those are the two explanations as to why the work was put on hold by the different owners, but they're both keen to continue that work, and the work has already started on 31 Cathedral Square. As I say, we've as part of those works discovered the asbestos, so it's a fairly straightforward request for an extension of time. I'm happy to try and answer any queries that councillors have with regards to that.
No, thank you. That's a very straightforward explanation. Do I have any questions? You're happy to move? So Jake McClellan moves, seconded by Melanie Coker. I'll put that resolution. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Brendan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
The next one is the Community Waterways Partnership Charter. Just drawing councillors' attention to an amended resolution, a new item 3 that sits in the resolutions, notes that the signing of the Community Waterways Partnership Charter supports the obligations of the Comprehensive Stormwater Network Discharge Consent and enhances actions already commenced. So it's just to be clear about the association of the partnership with our obligations under the Comprehensive Stormwater Network Discharge Consent. Pauline, would you like to introduce this?
That'd be fine. Just wondering if you want... Oh, it doesn't matter. Okay, so look, basically, it's a very good report that explains everything in here quite well, I thought, but as a condition of the Comprehensive Stormwater Discharge Consent that was granted to the Council by ECAN in January of this year, it's a 25-year consent. The City Council is to show improvements in our stormwater quality. So for the Council to address this by infrastructure improvements only would be hundreds of millions of dollars and take years and years and years. So this charter is in response to that requirement to improve the quality of our stormwater. And stormwater is, I kind of look at it as the third water. We've got our drinking water, our wastewater, and then the stormwater, which is actually represents any water that runs off into our gutters and then into our waterways. And the stormwater that enters the waterways is untreated. So we know our waterways and rivers are now polluted as a result of the stormwater which carries contaminants, things like zinc, which comes off our roofs, copper from brake pads and copper roofs and spouting, phosphates and other metals. All of these are heavy and invisible metals, and they lodge and are stored in the sediments in our waterways and rivers. Very, very, very difficult to remove once they're in there. And then there's other pollutants that cause E. coli, which is a result of dogs and ducks and possibly other. Don't go into that. So the City Council is joining with all other organisations and community volunteers to indicate a willingness to share our knowledge and resources to clean up our waterways, which are the receiving environment of our stormwater. And it's worth noting that joining the Charter and partnering with a myriad of amazing community projects already happening, that by doing this, the City Council will achieve improvements while saving considerable costs to our infrastructure. By dealing with the contaminants at source, so stopping them getting in there in the first place, this is the whole idea of it. So you'll see that a huge component of the Charter is around education. So many people don't realise what goes into the stormwater, and they don't realise where the stormwater goes. For example, every runoff from our properties, like garden chemicals, washing the car with chemicals, cleaning paintbrushes incorrectly, etc. All of that goes into the down your driveway, into the gutter and straight into the waterways. So educating people will be of huge benefit on our water quality. It means behaviour change is what we're trying to implement here. And if I draw you to page 115, it outlines the City Council's current existing council community projects, which clearly outlines examples of the many community groups and official organisations, including Environment Canterbury, who are already signatories to this charter. And for Council to sign up will indicate our support and focus on our water quality for the recreation and ecology of our city. This charter is about partnerships, collaboration, working with communities to address our legal requirement to improve our stormwater quality and by means outside of our hard infrastructure. So on that note, I'll be happy to move this.
Thank you, Pauline. Aaron?
Oh, happy to second, but I did have a question as well.
Yes, certainly.
Yeah, thank you, Pauline. That was a fantastic introduction. Had a call just last week, so it's timely.
The question will be to Dave Adamson, who's online.
Okay, but I was just talking to Pauline because she's here, but the and she might
Aaron.
know the answer as well. Is the is around washing
I'm just trying
vehicles?
to chair the meeting, Aaron.
Sorry about that. apologise. I'm just not used to being in the same room as the mayor anymore.
I know. It's hard for me too.
Yeah. Take that as a compliment. It's a lot nicer than what my wife said in the last 7 weeks. Now.
Anyway, time's up, Aaron. You only get a minute to us.
Aaron.
The washing of vehicles on driveways was raised. So a resident rung and had said that other councils were looking or had made it illegal to wash vehicles on hard surfaces that run into the stormwater. Was our council looking at doing that in the near future?
I would be gobsmacked to find that somebody actually had the power to make that illegal. Dave, can you help us out there?
Right, so
we certainly put out a lot of publicity saying that it's undesirable to wash cars because on hard surfaces we do encourage people to put them on their lawn and wash them on the lawn, and then that filters out some of the contaminants. Because you do it on your driveway, it immediately hits our gutter and hits the stormwater system. So we have done a lot of publicity about it. How much people are complying or not complying, I must admit, during COVID-19 lockdown, I think we've probably got the cleanest fleet of cars Christchurch has ever had by the number of people I've seen around my neighbourhood cleaning their cars. And I would say the highest percentage of them did it on the driveway rather than on their grass. So we have put out a lot of publicity on it. We haven't at this stage. We could look at putting it into the bylaw. I'd have to get legal advice. That might be ultra vires, I'm not sure. But basically, we are certainly putting a lot of education material out about that.
Yeah, I think that we will accept just legal advice on this because, vires is actually important for bylaws. You can't pass a bylaw unless you've got the power with it, if it's in scope of it's delegated legislation, so it's subsidiary to primary legislation. So unless it's within the scope of the legislation, we can't introduce a bylaw. So
yes, but I understand
we'll get advice, but
yeah.
We'll get legal advice. We will not.
Oh, absolutely. And if other councils have done it, then it would be interesting to see what they've managed to do.
I'm really interested to know which ones they are, and I'll take that offline. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because a number of things in society that are undesirable sometimes become illegal.
We are in the process of reviewing our stormwater or three waters bylaw. So basically, those will be issues that we will look at, and obviously legal's involved in that process. Yeah. So we are bringing that back to council. I'm sorry, I'm not sure of the timetable at this point.
Yeah, look, I mean, the only thing that I'll just add to that is sometimes I worry about people looking to a regulatory outcome, a regulatory tool to enforce something which is just sensible. Every single person walking down a street can say to their neighbours, hey mate, don't do that, get your car onto grass or take it to a fully enclosed car washing place, because it is, I mean, we actually have to do this ourselves. We don't have to, I mean, is council going to employ people to go out and walk up driveways and say you can't do that?
Not at the moment.
No, we're not. But
just dob in your neighbour.
I mean, before people look for regulatory solutions, can we just ask people to think about what is a common sense approach to getting people to want to do the right thing? I mean, as long as we get the outcome, why would we put a whole lot of extra cost on the organisation, which then has to charge for it by way of rates, when good behaviour means that we wouldn't need to do it?
You can have a lot of rules that don't need enforcing. When you have a rule, like when the smoking rule come in, everyone stopped smoking in pubs at midnight on that Friday night.
Did not.
Okay, well, the good pubs then that I was frequenting, there was no one smoking after midnight, and it never got enforced. They never sent out the smoking police.
They did.
Bring in a rule and everyone goes.
A lot of people were charged with breaching the legislation. So I'm just, look, let's take this offline. I'm just asking people to apply a degree of common sense and not to ask for regulatory steps as a first port of call when it is common sense not to wash your cars on sides of roads or on hard surfaces.
Yeah, and Dave said we've done a lot of publicity around it,
Yes.
and yet people are still breaching.
Yes.
So,
Leanne, can I just add something that would be of interest? That the Christchurch
they
West
can
Melton
put their
Zone
car
Committee
waste
has
in
brought in a couple of ways to actually use a carrot instead of a stick to help people to address these things.
I've got Sarah and then you and then Tim.
One of them
and
is
then
dealing with industries, and people are telling them what stormwater improvements they're making voluntarily and getting certificates at a ceremony and things like that. So a positive approach rather than
I'd rather take a carrot approach than a stick approach, but that's me because I'm a lawyer and I know how much these things cost. So Sarah and then Tim and then Anne.
I've got a...
No, I was just going to point out the lack of grass on a lot of streets.
There are a lack of grass on a lot of streets.
And don't want to force costs on people to take them to car washes, which are really environmentally unsound.
Yeah, but there are probably places that people can take cars. That they should not be washing them on streets. Full stop, end of story. And if they should, they shouldn't be turning hoses on them. You can do it without...
Do we really need to discuss this now?
Anyway,
we just received
so Tim and Anne.
Thank you. Just ECAN is obviously one of our key partners here, and ECAN ran a program when it came to clean air with regards to upgrading fireboxes and fires, etc., but then also keeping an eye on quality of the moisture and timber, etc., which cuts down or adds to pollution. They've done an outstanding job there, and our city is a better place for it. So I'm just wondering, it would be really good to talk with ECAN to see if they were looking at doing something along the same lines with regards to information on our waterways. But, yeah.
That's through the zone committees. They're a partnership. Yeah.
Well, I think it's actually more for the city because, it's the city that's the partner. So I think it'd be, personally, I'd like to sit down with them and see when we have our meetings with ECAN. So I think that'd be a really good way because it was an outstanding program with regards to the clean air process which they ran.
Right. So now you'd like to move it. It's been seconded by Aaron.
Yep. And I'd like,
Anne.
Is this question or debate? Are we in debate now?
No,
debate?
it's question.
No, I'm not. I don't have a question. I have debate.
Oh. Yanni, sorry, I do apologise.
well.
I just wish that I hadn't started this.
Cheers. Thanks, Dave. I note that this is really about signing the charter, so it's not really about the global stormwater discharge consent. Can you just give an update on where that process has got to in terms of the resolutions that we passed as part of the annual plan? Is particularly in relation to the Pawaho Heathcote River. Thank you.
Yep. Don't think he's...
I'm trying. Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep. We've just given an update and it's been posted on the Big Tin Can to the Three Waters Committee, which is normally where we would report on the progress on that. And that got posted last night, I understand. So we are working right through all the issues about the implementation of the community, of the comprehensive stormwater discharge consent. And the first stormwater management plan that needs to be written or reviewed is the Heathcote one. So staff have got that at the priority list. Now, I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure what they've done in relationship to COVID-19 because I've actually had to direct them off into other things, particularly financial things. So it may have got slightly delayed over the last 7 or 8 weeks, but that's certainly been working. I'm not quite sure whether Helen's on board and whether she can update any further than that. Are you there, Helen? Doesn't sound like she is. So we have given you an update last night and it was put on the Big Tin Can by David Corlett.
Thank you. So it's been moved in second. Oh, now it says appoints a councillor to be a signatory, and I mean, Pauline, it would make good sense if you were that councillor. You've actually moved the motion though, so I'd like to replace the word councillor with Pauline Cotter, and I would like to ask maybe Andrew to move the motion instead, and that way that you're clean, as it were, in that regard. All right, so is there any debate?
Yes.
Anne?
Thank you. The whole driveways thing is an example of why we need this, because it's about education, it's about bringing the community, the council and all of us together to actually address these issues. Education is key, and I think it's a no-brainer to actually support this. It's exactly what we want to see happening in our communities, where we partner together and we together take on the responsibility of caring for our waterways. So I just hope everybody supports this.
Thank you very much. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much. Then we've got the three Part A reports, Linwood Central Heathcote Community Board, the outcome of the property review process 1 Carlisle Street, the outcome of property review process 113 Huxley Street, and 17 Hills Road, land for road widening. In my view, these can be moved on block, one mover and seconder for the recommendations on the three reports. Sarah Templeton's happy to move, seconded by Sam McDonald. Is there any discussion? Or is it a question, is it? Question or discussion? Question, I think. Question? Which one? Which one before I caution the member?
All I want to do is have we, this is great that we're getting rid of stuff that we don't need. Have we got lots more of these that we can get rid of?
These aren't, that's not a question for today. It is a question that you can certainly raise tomorrow as we start discussions on the annual plan. So, but thank you for raising it anyway, because you have alerted us to the issue, not that anyone wasn't alerted to that issue. So it's been moved and seconded. I shall put Yanni. Yes, debate.
Thank you. I won't be supporting this. We've had a good discussion at the community board, and I appreciate that I was in the minority view, but just to reflect on Carlisle Street, for example, I think at a time when we've declared a climate emergency, we've got some green space left in a pretty industrial part of the city, where if we want to plant trees, if we want to encourage local food resilience, it seems to me crazy that we would be selling off green space in this particular area. Just when you look at the map, you can see really clearly that there is a lack of green space in parts of our city. We've got tree canopy reports that have been presented to our board previously that show the deficit, and I just think actually we should be retaining that for ecological value and environmental value. So I won't support the selling off of Carlisle Street. I did think actually too, when the railway comes back into the city, that's actually probably the only piece of land we now own along the corridor for a railway station close to the central city. So, you think about long term, what the impacts are, and I don't think there's a case to sell off that little piece of land. So I won't be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Tim, Melanie and Sarah.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Sarah's going to close the debate. So Tim, Melanie, Jake and then Sarah.
Before the change in ward boundaries was bestowed upon us, I had the privilege of representing Sydenham area, and if you look at the Sydenham area, unfortunately this map doesn't show the two green spaces on Colombo Street which have been created, and they're wonderful spaces. And if you're looking at use and value of a space, those two new spaces are far more valuable to the environment for those people working and living in this area than Carlisle Street. If you go past Carlisle Street, it's hardly ever used. And if you go further down to Sydenham, the old Sydenham site, although I do question the design of the Fletcher's buildings there, they do have a a green courtyard there, which is a large green courtyard with a beautiful old historic tree in the middle. And then, of course, you've got Sydenham Park. So I think the area has 3 new spaces and the historic Sydenham Park. So I think the area is really well catered for, and so I can see the logic behind putting this land up for sale when we actually need to generate some funds, but sensibly. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Melanie and Jake and Sarah.
Like Tim, well, I wasn't a councillor, but I was on the community board when we were Sprayed and Heathcote, and this came to our board. And I probably view this quite differently to Tim, but at the time we did discuss similar to what Yanni's talking about, and of course it sort of got left. So I personally would like to see that remain as green space, and that was the overall impression of the board at the time, as far as I recall.
Jake?
That obviously the people of Sydenham are much better represented since the boundary changes, but I will be supporting, I'll be supporting the not to dispose of Carlisle Street, because I still don't believe there is enough green space and it's hard to come by in this area of town.
Pauline?
Yeah, look, I'm actually quite swayed by Yanni's comments about the potential for that to be used as a small railway station in the future. Not to say that it could be, but if we remove this, we remove that opportunity, and I'd like to see more work done on that site to see if it could be used for that, because as Yanni said, there is no other area along there and it would be perfect. So I'm going to oppose this today.
Sarah?
Kia ora. So these properties have gone through a very thorough, very robust process over a very long period of time. We have talked to the community. There are no community uses, which is part of that whole community board involvement. There's expressions of interest, those kind of things, and there weren't any. These particular sites, if they are done as just green spaces, they are very small and will require, additional operational expenditure. And for the size of them, the ecological value isn't particularly high when you consider that you can have much larger areas. So, for example, a tui needs about 400 square metres, per tui or whatever it is. Those kind of things are need to be taken into account if you're looking at the actual ecological values rather than just a bit of green space for amenity. They're quite different things. The community board did agree with staff that each of these sites was appropriate to be go to the next stage of the process and to be sold. It may be that there's not a buyer, in which case it'll have to come back to us to work out what to do from there. But these particular sites have also been through the organisation to see if any parts of the organisation see a use for them, and that came back negative as well. So there's simply no good reason to hold on to them and incur the operational expenditure at this point.
Thank you. So I will put them separately. So I'll start with the 1 Carlisle Street paper, number 18. So I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. Can you put up your hands for no? It's probably easier this way. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Leave them up so that Joe can write down the names. So that's carried. And you got them all? No. Okay. Can you?
Yanni, Pauline, Jake.
We'll call them out. So Melanie, Yanni, Jimmy, Pauline, and Andrew, and Jake. Thank you. The second one is the 113 Huxley Street. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. 17 Hills Road, number 20. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Oh, except that you will change the word principal. Agrees in principle. Can you correct the spelling? and I'm not going to do it anymore.
We just put that in to see if you'd noticed it.
Yeah, so I'm going to tell people the difference before we go into PX. So that, and because I'm being a school teacher today, I'm going to tell you this. The word principal, when it looks like it's a noun, is actually an adjective when it's spelt P-A-L. And the only times that it is used as a noun, it's become a noun, is when it is an adjective in its full statement. So a principal teacher is spelt P-A-L. A principal sum of a mortgage is spelt P-A-L. Every other principle that is a noun is P-L-E. All right?
Phil, have you got that? Because I haven't.
And Leanne, that was a great use of ratepayers' time and money, so thank you for that.
There was no ratepayers' money expended on that free bit of advice. I like people to understand very simple grammatical rules that help them deal with what can be difficult situations. Now, I'm going to move the resolution to exclude the public, and I'm just going to bring up the actual resolution. And it is asking that Sue Rushton, the Director of Inspire, remain after the public have been excluded for item 26, update on Royden Quarry consent, as she has knowledge that is relevant to that item and will assist the council, and that Craig Downey, Chief Executive of Eco Central, and Paul Munro, Chief Executive of CCHL, remain after the public have been excluded for item 24, which is an update on recycling services, and he can assist in that regard. And I'll just come to the actual resolution itself. Sorry, and if I had been better prepared, I would have opened it up at the page. And so the there's material that sits in behind the 17 Hills Road resolution, which has assisted councillors to make that decision that we just made, and that information will be released. Attachment 1 on the deposit of the plan of the subdivision, and it's 24 December 2024, and the second one, again, another valuers agreement, it refers to 24 December 2020, so I'm not sure why there's a difference between the two, but I'm assuming that there's a reason for that. But they will be made available at the appropriate time. Public excluded council minutes are obviously included. Recycling services update, it's a commercial activities, conduct of negotiations, and the information may prejudice the party's commercial position and considers commercial responses to changes in the international market, and that will be released once the resolutions have been implemented. The appointment of independent members of the Council's Audit and Risk Management Committee, again, it's to protect the reputations of candidates who may not be approved by the Council, and the update on Royden Quarry consent includes legal advice, so legal professional privilege applies. So, so I'm moving that. Do I have a seconder for it? Mike Davidson, Jimmy Chen.
Yeah, because in considering this, the item 26, the Royden Quarry, the consent decision has been 454 the submissions, and my understanding, I got a lot of the email from the community, not only the Templeton community, but also Yonkers Rural, wider Hornby, and even Solvent, etc., concern this issue. So whether I would like to seeking the legal advice in here, formal explain why this issue should be into the PX rather than in the open to public, publicly, then give everyone fully understand, because they expect that this should be in the public the meeting rather than PS. It's okay, seeking the legal advice in here.
Thank you. So is that a question that you would like?
That's a question, just a question.
Yeah, I mean, I can answer the question, but I might invite Ian Thompson to answer it if he would prefer it. Well, perhaps if I answer the question and then if you'd like to add something to it or tell me that I'm wrong. The answer to the question is that when we receive the legal advice to maintain legal professional privilege, we have to do that in a PX environment. If we did that publicly, then that would expose us to legal risk, obviously, in relation to the decision that we made, whatever the decision is. So if we made the decision to accept the legal advice that we receive, then that putting that legal advice into the public arena before the appeal period is over would be it would put us at risk, and the same if we didn't accept that advice. So it is purely so that we can discuss in some detail the expert advice and the legal advice at the same time, because they are inextricably linked to each other. So that is the reason why. But I understand the member would like to vote against the resolution to go into public excluded. So I will put that resolution separately to enable the member to do so. Thank you. All right, is that sufficient from a legal point of view? I've got a thumbs up from the lawyer, so there you go. All right, so I will accepting. Sorry, I haven't got the number. Oh, yes, I have. Accepting item 26. I will put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no.
This is a PX.
No, this is just
it is.
25.
Excuse me.
25. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I thought
So it's
26.
22 and 23, 24 and 25. So I'm doing your one separately. So I'll put that motion again. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. That's carried. And item 26, I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no.
No. No.
So can you put up your hands for no? Yanni Johansson, Jimmy Chen and Anne Galloway. Thank you, that's noted. So thank you very much, and we'll enable the live stream to come off, and we'll take a